Good morning. Welcome to Hobby Evolution episode 116. It is a Tuesday, the week of Thanksgiving. I'm going to get the haircut done today. I'm going to get a haircut today. I did the shave yesterday, haircut today in preparation for Thanksgiving and being around people. So today I wanted to talk about another topic of hobby away from my hobby. And I showed off in the screen capture picture of a wrestling magazine. It's the latest edition, at least for me as a subscriber. Pro Wrestling Illustrated. They do the annual PWI 500, where they rank the 500 best professional wrestlers. They also do a women's top 100, which is new. I'm new back into the wrestling magazine, specifically Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and I'll dive into that in just a moment. As for the hobby, kind of a lot going on yesterday, just in discussions. I did not have a chance to get the big boxes counted, so we're going on a week now of those sitting sealed up. So I do plan on getting those tackled today. Kurt from Charlotte sent a box, probably 200 cards in the box. I'll get those counted as well, so should have an accurate, updated count tonight. So as it stands right now, 508,400 plus what's in the now three boxes that I have. So yesterday I was involved in a break of 2020 Leaf Ultimate Draft. My favorite breaker, and the first time I ever broke was in a baseball break was actually, no, it wasn't my first, because I was in some in 2014 because I pulled some Arizmendi Alcantara's in 2014. But when I started kind of getting back into breaks was in 2000, maybe it was 2015, 16, 17. I was not living in this house, so it would have had to have been probably 2016. It could have been 2015. I digress. But it was with Real Breaks. Now, Real Breaks has two main breakers, Ryan and Tom. Ryan just opened up a shop in Champlin, Minnesota. Tom moved up into the Green Bay area a couple years ago. He was actually closer to me in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. And he actually just opened, or not, just purchased a storefront in Waupun, Wisconsin. He'll be opening a shop in Waupun downtown. So awesome guys. I've done breaks with both of them. Tom and I actually have a connection. I know his dad. I used to interview his dad on a weekly basis at a radio station in Illinois. Small world. We meet through baseball cards, and we both moved up north to the Madison, Wisconsin area. So I actually have been to, when he lived in Fort Atkinson, went over a few times. I would order cases from him. Gave me a great deal on cases. Sat in on a break with him. So great guy. So their breaks fill super fast. We're talking 5 minutes. They fill. So last night they usually tease like, hey, we're going to announce this break at 5 p.m. Central. And once it does, I mean, you have to click like refresh. You have to be right on it. And I was. So I got the alert. So I waited, and I really wanted to get the Cubs. Their prices, you just blindly type in Cubs because you know the price is going to be great. So the break was at 5:00. Boom! As soon as I saw it load, I typed in Cubs, and I beat it by like 5 seconds. A guy right behind me, I mean, it was 5 seconds later, typed in Cubs. Might not even have been 5 seconds. It was bang bang. So I was able to get the Cubs, $40, awesome price. I was actually shopping for an Ed Howard from this set. I had put in an offer. I talked about it yesterday. Put in an offer that was declined, not even countered. And and I think the price shipped was like $35. Um, First box, it broke last night. First box, that Ed Howard auto was pulled. So that was worth it. That was worth the $40 to me. Um, just because it was a fun break. It wasn't just a purchase. So I pulled that, and then the second Cub, there was actually 4 Cubs hits in the case, and these are sweet. These are sweet cards. Leaf is I think severely underrated with their card designs. So Brennan Davis, a Brennan Davis auto numbered to 75 was the second hit. So that's another great hit. And then pulled autos of base autos of Richard Gallardo, who's young. He's only like 17, 18. He's a pitcher though. He was the third pull. And then Corey Abbott, who's a little more seasoned. I think he'll probably be at AAA this year in 2021. He was the fourth auto. So well worth the $40. I tried to get in on a second team break last night. They did a bunch of them. The second one, it had been posted for 2 minutes and it was like already full. In the Cubs, this was a pick your team. The Cubs was in there. They also were doing some randoms. So I was able to satisfy my appetite and was lucky to get 4 Cubs. So that was a lot of fun last night doing the break. And it was with Tom. I haven't done a break with Tom in a long time. Because they do fill so fast, I miss out on mini breaks. And when I have done breaks, they've been with Ryan's team, and I think Ryan has a couple breakers in his shop that are doing breaks. They actually it started out just Ryan and Tom, and then they added a third guy, and I forget his name. I only did one break with him, and then Ryan opened his shop, hired a couple guys. Tom hired 1 or 2 guys. So pretty cool operation. They've actually been breaker of the year 2 years running. That was just announced at the I think it was the hobby summit they had a few weeks ago. They were named breaker of the year 2nd year in a row. So awesome dudes, great prices. Breaks fill within minutes. That's great and bad, because you have to be right on top of it to get in. You're going to get shut out of breaks often. But that means that they have a big following and very trustworthy. So was a lot of fun and glad to get involved in that. So I did get some Cubs last night. I also recently I kind of dove back into wrestling magazines. Okay. So now for wrestling magazines, it's kind of, here's another COVID. If it weren't for COVID, I probably wouldn't have rediscovered what I loved as a teenager. In the mid 90s, I was collecting wrestling magazines. So I started collecting cards. I really got into it in 1989. That was my first year collecting cards. I collected both baseball and football early on. And then 1992, I really kind of put all my eggs into basketball. I was a big Shaquille O'Neal fan. So in 92, I kind of stepped away from baseball, still collected football a little bit, but was mainly on basketball. And by 95, I had kind of got tired of basketball, and I had around 93, 94, I started watching wrestling again after my childhood being a Hulkamaniac. So I got into wrestling, and I discovered wrestling magazines probably early 95, like January 95. And I think I first discovered them when I went grocery shopping with my mom at Eagle Country Market, which went under several years ago, but it was a Midwest regional grocery store chain. So I picked up like a WWF magazine. Then I discovered, some of the other magazines: Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Wrestle America, Wrestling World, Inside Wrestling, The Wrestlers, just a bunch of them. So I had discovered by the end of the year, I had really through 1995, that was my, as I collect Cubs baseball cards now, I was collecting wrestling magazines all my allowance and paper route money went to wrestling magazines in 1995 and 96 into 97. So at the end of the year, Pro Wrestling Illustrated was one of the magazines that I kind of took to. And they did a PWI 500. And I love numbers. And I love rankings. And it was just amazing that they ranked 500 pro wrestlers. And I'm discovering wrestlers I'd never heard of that are on the indie scene. I was following some of the larger indie promotions at the time, like USWA and Smoky Mountain, from just reading the magazines throughout the year. So I see where guys like Boo Bradley or Tracy Smothers fall in the pro wrestling rankings by PWI in the 500. So by 97 into 98, now I'm getting into, middle of high school. 98, Cubs get hot. Sammy Sosa, Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game, the home run chase, all that. Boom, I'm back into baseball. I'm going to the card shop, collecting baseball cards. That overtakes my wrestling magazine fandom. I still watch wrestling through like 2000, and then from like 2000 to really like 2014, I just kind of dabble. I got into it again like 2006, 7, 8, because I had a friend of mine who's big into it, and we would watch the pay-per-views, but just kind of dabbled. And then since 2014, I got the WWE Network in 2014, and I would just watch usually like old stuff. I would watch the network sorting cards, always on, and they did like a program switch about a year ago. And so my smart TV, which is only like a year and a half old, 2 years old, no longer capable of carrying the network for some software change they made. So I just canceled the network. And I really fell off the current product. I wasn't into it. It seemed like everything up until a couple of years ago was WWE. I didn't watch New Japan. I tried watching TNA, Impact, but it just didn't appeal to me. And then AEW came along, and I'd followed AEW wrestlers a little bit from the podcast that Conrad Thompson does, with Tony Schiavone and Eric Bischoff, Bruce Pritchard, Arn Anderson, Jim Ross. So I followed this a little bit and kind of saw this coming. Hey, this is pretty cool. Watched the first episode. I was hooked from episode 1. NWA came back. Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins owns the NWA. They did a studio show, which was like a throwback to the 80s studio shows. So I really got into that. COVID hit, knocked them out of the game, which is too bad. But now it seems like, at least for me, and maybe it's only personal, but it seems like the indie scene is really hot again, like it was back, 25, 30 years ago. So I subscribed. There was an ad for magazines.com. Clicked on it. They had Pro Wrestling Illustrated, a year subscription for like $20. So I thought the PWI 500 was out. It's like, I like to pick up PWI 500. I did a couple years ago in 2017, just for the fun of it. This is Okada. He's a Japanese wrestler. He was ranked number 1 in 2017. So for whatever reason, it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get your first subscription, which is wild to me. I ordered online and it still took 6 to 8 weeks to get my first magazine. In 2020, I don't get it. This isn't 1989 anymore. Anyway, I digress. So my first magazine came last week. It's the Women's Top 100. I was hoping that 6 to 8 weeks was just a long guess and I would get the first issue, the PWI 500, but I did not. So I did order a back issue. So I started reading it, this new one, and I read it cover to cover over a few days. And it's like, I miss holding magazines and reading. I'm into the AEW. I still follow WWE. I'm familiar with some of the indie guys. So it was fun to just kind of put it all together in a magazine like I did in 1995 and 96. And I decided to do my own little Pro Wrestling Illustrated collection, trying to collect the run of magazines. It started in 1979. So I have like 40 years worth of magazines to catch up on. So I found some cheap on eBay, some older ones from the 80s and 90s. I found a lot that, I think per issue, it came out to like $2 or $3 an issue. I got the number 2 issue from like December 79 for a really good price. There was the original number 1 issue with Dusty Rhodes on the cover. Had an auction ending last night. Ended up selling for $70. And actually my bid was pretty close to what the final bid went. And I was hesitant to put that number in, but I did, and I lost. And I'm kind of like, okay, I can use that $70 elsewhere. So I'm just kind of using, kind of this time to find myself. And so I started printing off, on the PWI website, which is crazy, pwi-online.com. It's crazy because it's like Sport Lots, the website. It's like 25 years old. Like, I think this is the original website. It's so old, outdated, clunky. But they do have the back issues. So this is what the cover issues looked like in 79 and 80. So I printed those off as a checklist, as they come in, because I just, started kind of buying randomly. So I'm going to wait, and before I purchase any more, check off the checklist and have my Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I put them in a magazine cover, and I'll put them in some binders. So that is kind of a side collection that I started up. So just kind of my hobby away from a hobby, because it's something I can do. I can pick up a magazine, I can lay on the couch, read a little bit of the magazine. It takes me away from baseball cards and in my phone, since it's always seemingly in my hands. So that's my hobby away from the hobby. That's all I had for today. Wrestling heavy. So if you're not into pro wrestling, probably a bore for you. I'm sure most of them are a bore for you. So that's it for today. I still don't have tracking update for my Bowman Draft First Edition. That's the other thing, and I'm going to write that down on my whiteboard that I want to talk about tomorrow, because there was a lot of debate, a lot of chatter and back and forth on Bowman Draft First Edition yesterday, because shipments started trickling in to people who bought expecting boxes but only got packs. And I'll talk about that tomorrow. Check me out on Twitter at 1millioncubs, the website 1millioncubs.com, eBay store link, top of the page, 10% off when you buy 3 or more cards. eBay store link, top of the page, 1millioncubs.com. Thanks for tuning in. Back tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday.